I just learned GPT-4 and GPT-5 changed everything.
I just wonder after this weekend, how many companies are completely invisible.
Hey everybody, welcome to AI with Bry, the show where we dive deep into how to learn, leverage, and lead with AI. I'm your host, Brian Dunstad, technologist, strategist, and someone deeply curious about how AI is reshaping our lives and our work. Each week, we're joined by a guest who's making waves in the AI space, and together we're going to explore what they've learned, how they're applying it day to day, and how they're bringing others along for the ride. Today, I'm excited to welcome Matt Oess to the show. He's our partner at the firm at TechCXO. He's been there even longer than me, with more than 13 years under his belt in executive coaching and RevOps and growth. He's got a wide array of experiences, and he provides seasoned C-level talent to high-growth companies. He spent his career organizing and scaling through technology, strategy, and even operational excellence. And today, that means even more so AI. Matt has deep experience advising teams on digital transformation, SaaS growth, innovation, and has been helping executives understand AI, but also putting it to work. So welcome to the show, Matt. Thanks for being here.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
There we go. Yeah. Appreciate you jumping in to hang out with us. Our first segment up is really the learn segment. That's my favorite one, honestly, because the AI landscape is changing so fast, so rapidly. I'm just curious, what is something you've learned recently, and what tool is really standing out to you that you've been playing with?
Yeah. So, let's see, every single day is a different answer to that question.
It really is.
It's literally been like 2 years that I got bit hard by this bug, and my brain has just been on fire, learning at an exponential rate. And I don't know how many years, decades since I've learned, at this geometric rate. I would say probably the thing that hit me the hardest over the weekend, there's this new tool that I've gotten introduced to. It's called My Brandy. And this is, we have search engine optimization, SEO, right? Well, obviously we need to care about GEO, like generative, right?
Yeah.
When somebody does a generative search and asks a question, will I show up in the citations, right? As a company, as a whatever. And this tool is like the first thing I've seen that really, really drills into who's being cited, how, what do you need to do? And it's just this incredible rabbit hole of, do you show up in generative AI, and what do you need to do to your content and your website and your schema and your tags and all those things? And so, I just wonder after this weekend, how many companies are completely invisible in 2025 to generative AI because they don't have a tool like this. So just really, really excited about that. See the potential bringing that tool into the folks that do marketing and sales at TechCXO in order to provide this service to our customers.
Yeah, that's such an amazing one here. I mean, I was watching a couple of videos over the weekend about what I think is this split. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Altered Carbon, where they have the AI and the AI is talking to other AIs and figuring out problems. But the video this weekend was talking about the dual web, where you and I go to a website and see the beautiful graphics and images and exactly what the human should see to resonate with that website. But if you're a bot and anybody else, the whole website is geared towards just text, information, exactly what the robot needs to best glean what they need to get the answer back to the human eventually on that front. Do you have some thoughts? Have you seen any tools around dual web and some of that stuff? It sounds very similar to Brandy, what you were saying.
So I spent the entire weekend with my app that we'll talk about at some point today. Mm-hmm. But it was basically doing exactly what you said. So what, it was nerdy wise, it was basically creating what's called a static HTML, which is nothing that a human would ever see, but it flashes up before my JavaScript gets rendered, and it's the JavaScript that was hiding me from generative AI.
Yeah.
Well, so in a split second, this thing's going to come up, which is a text version of all this information, so that generative AI and bots and Google and that can look for these websites, get all the information they need, and that happens in a fraction of a second before the actual website renders for the human. So to tie all those things together, that's how I spent my entire weekend, is like, how do I get prepared for what generative AI needs to see in order for me to be relevant and remain relevant?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other tools or use cases that have surprised you lately?
Well, there's just dozens and dozens and dozens.
There's so many. Have you played with there's a couple new tools in Perplexity. I'm just curious, if you've gone down the Perplexity rabbit hole lately.
There's a couple that really come to mind. One is, through this 2-year journey, I've created a whole bunch of workflows just to do stuff productivity wise for myself, right? And it was very manual, and just building these long projects and agents and things like that in order to get AI to deliver value for me. Mm-hmm. And now with MCP, multi-context protocol, right, and Anthropic sort of being behind it, Claude Desktop has created these connectors where you can now connect to your Google Cloud Drive, your Gmail, your calendar, AI note takers, GitHub, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now Claude has access to all those things. So now I'm starting to create these little projects, which are like, I'll tell you one that I built a week ago. I look at all the emails that I sent to prospects over the last 21 days. See who has responded and who hasn't. The ones that haven't responded, that I haven't followed up with already, get the context, look at the AI note taker, look at our exchanges, and then put together a draft follow-up email and put it in my draft outbox in Gmail. Yeah. And once it's done with this, and it takes 10 minutes to run, but it does that, it might find 7 that I need to follow up with. I go to my Gmail, I look at those things, and in 5 minutes, I can do the little tweaking that I need to do, but it writes in my tone of voice, and it knows everything about our conversations. And so it gets really, really close, but it's a massive, change in sort of productivity. And it's so much better than just a zero-shot generative AI response.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've played with a couple of those things myself, and it's really, really powerful. Fixer AI is probably the one I've seen the masses going down that path. But when you get to those MCP connections, you can really get some of those things to do a lot more detailed work than some of the high-level ones.
I'll give you another just real quick example is I'm constantly trying to figure out, all right, I've been introduced to this new prospect or this new business partner, potential, and I just need to sort of get them in my system. So like I need to add them to my Google contacts. I need to add them to my CRM. I might want to put up a follow-up task in ClickUp. And it's just painful to just remember to do all that stuff. So literally now what I do through Google Desktop is I just put the person's email address in. It goes to my Gmail, gets a bunch of information, and then fills out all those things. It connects to my CRM and et cetera, and it just does it all for me. And this is the future for all of us, is like it just does it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess though, what's your reaction or advice that you'd give people that are feeling overwhelmed? Like, I just learned GPT-4 and GPT-5 changed everything, right? Like Claude just came out with Opus, and now like all my prompt magic I have to relearn. Like, it's just this, I want to be learning this stuff, but it's changing so fast. Like, I can't hang out on the weekend and work on this. Like, I got to go to my kids' soccer games. Like, how do you answer the overwhelming question?
I think one of the first things you said during the intro to this podcast today was the word curiosity. And if your curiosity doesn't push through that resistance, right, you're going to fall behind, right? So it's like, you just have to want this so bad and just be passionate about it, because no matter what you don't like about whatever tool you're using, or the state of security or governance or functionality, or like, if I back up a year, image generation where the humans had 7 fingers, right? In all those cases, all I can tell my clients is, yeah, it's not right yet, but just give it a week, right?
Yeah.
And all that stuff is going to sort itself out. So there are lots and lots of reasons to be overwhelmed and confused and paralyzed. And we work with clients every single day to help them understand this is justified, right? Every single day, there's somebody saying, introducing the world's most powerful model. And today it's ChatGPT or OpenAI, and tomorrow it's Claude, and then it's DeepSeek, and then it's Grok, and then it's Gemini, and then the cycle just starts all over again.
Yep.
Meanwhile, you have somebody like Gartner that's coming out and saying 85% of all AI projects fail.
That's right.
Well, that's probably true, but like, when did you really think you were going to get an ROI on something this new? The right word is yet. Of course you haven't yet, because you just started and you're doing you're basically not even crawling. You haven't even gotten close to a sprint. So, you're going to take a little patience. But meanwhile, you have, AI fatigue. That's a real thing. You're just inundated with who doesn't have AI on their website. How much of it is true? How many of these people really and truly have their 10,000 hours of expertise? AI washing. Like, I saw an ad for an AI toaster. Like, it is a timer. It is a toaster. Like, you can try all you want. Remember when Amazon came out with that sort of like, just push your cart, out the door, and we'll bill your credit card. And then we found out later that it was AI washing. There were 1,000 people in India that were manually checking out 3/4 of the clients.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just smoke and mirrors. Now, it's not going to be smoke and mirrors for long. Right. And I think that's every single one of these. All I can think of is yet. Soon that will be different. So there's security fears and bad actors and waiting for Salesforce or, SAP or whatever my favorite core platform is to put all this stuff into place. Well, you're going to be waiting for a long time. My data's not ready. You're going to be, there's pressure for an immediate ROI. There's lots and lots of reasons to be paralyzed.
Yeah.
Right. You have to push past that when it comes to something like AI.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I think that's such a practical insight. I mean, the part about like, you have to learn this stuff to figure out how you're going to leverage it. And I think a lot of our listeners can take that to heart and say, look, we've got to double down on the learning piece and put that to action right away. So, I mean, we head into this leverage section of the podcast where we're like, how do we leverage AI in our day-to-day? And like, you and I have been around and been leaders enough to sort of remember these other paradigm shifts, right? Like, oh, this PC thing's a fad, or this internet thing's a fad, or do we really need to buy a domain name? Or like, does everybody need to get Excel training? Like, we've been through this curve before. I don't know if it's went as fast as this one, but this one's definitely going fast. But I'm just curious if you've got some parallels that you could expand on from what you've seen in the past, and or how are you helping the clients that you're working with really lean in and leverage AI day to day?
Yeah, a couple things come to my mind. First, I think the PC is a perfect example, because think about when we started. I don't know, I was 12 years old. I mowed 1,000 lawns at $5 a lawn, and I bought a Apple IIc for $1,200, which was like a massive amount of money for a kid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, I was the only person I knew with a computer. Right. And when I did a summer internship, there were like 5 computers, and people were scratching their head, having the same type of conversation. What are we going to do with all these nice ladies in the typing pool? And what's that going to mean? And like, we didn't run out and like suddenly every company buy a massive mainframe, and we didn't buy PCs for every, man, woman, and child, right? We sort of like, there were some early adopters, and they were the team members that had the curiosity, that started to play with the stuff. And then they told 2 friends, and they told 2 friends. And then it became like, all right, we see how to leverage this now let's outfit this department with this type of software and these type of applications and these type of training, right? And then you really move the needle by leveraging that technology at scale. But you have to crawl, walk, run with anything. The difference now is you just don't have a lot of time to stay ahead, because the whole world took a long time to go through that curve back then. Now you don't have time because others are just going to lap you.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because I think that Gartner article is the hype going on right now is like, trying to almost pop the bubble a little bit, but I don't see this as a bubble, in my opinion. I see this as nothing but strong growth for years to come as people figure out how to learn through it and leverage it day to day. How are you seeing companies move from this AI hype into real measurable results? Are there any projects you could talk to us about?
There's a couple of things that sort of come to my mind. First, if you think about some of the, I don't know if mistakes is a great word to use or not, but you saw these people who were like, I have a friend who is a product manager at NVIDIA, right? And we talked probably 18 months ago when, NVIDIA was just insane and growth was whatever. And he was talking about how like the top 10 companies in each one of these sectors, they're building their own, they're building their own models. They're building their own server farms with AI chips. And you think like if you're Eli Lilly or you're a big pharmaceutical company and you don't want to be left behind, I just don't know how much money they wasted, right?
Yeah.
Because they went after a really big problem with a really big budget, but nobody had done it before, right? So what I would suggest to what I do with my clients is start with Cloud Desktop, right? Just get some mileage. Just start to see what happens when you pull different levers. Try this writing, tool. Try this text to speech, Synthesia video app. Try, get Jasper in the hands of your, copywriters, et cetera, et cetera. Just start to see what this can do, and then you'll build on it, build on it, build on it. So as I think about my journey, and I know that we'll probably get into this, but it's the best example I can think of. I started by like doing these make.com, building these agents and this automation and leveraging LLMs and just starting to play with prompt management and things like that. And then I got this idea for this product, which is Revenue Growth Agent. And then it just became this everyday rabbit hole. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of conversations with agents like ChatGPT or Grok or Perplexity or whatever my favorite was of that day. Like, how do I do this? And how do I do this? And so it became vibe coding with Bolt.new. And then it became, all right, I've got to learn how to set up VS Code, right? Because I need to actually develop real code. And then I got to remember after 30 years of not writing code, how to write code, and AI helped me do that. And then it's like, all right, I need an authentication platform. What does that mean? I need a structured database. I need a RAG vector database. I couldn't spell any of these things.
That's right.
CTO. I haven't written code in 30 years.
Yeah.
If you develop this relationship with it, you can do all these amazing things, and they all stack on top of each other in order to create these amazing things. And I'm very proud of what we've created with Revenue Growth Agent, because and I think this is the promise of AI. You put all these things together and it solves previously unsolvable problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, expand on that for us, because I know it's a big buzz at TechCXO. What is the Revenue Growth Agent? Why did you create it? What was the need that you saw? And just describe it for those that may not know about it.
So, like I said, I was probably a year into this nerdy deep dive and just playing with all these tools, and I wanted to share it. So I started to show it to some of my fellow TechCXO partners, and they're just bewildered at like, this is not what people were proposing it to be. Like, you're actually getting really practical, useful things out of it. And eventually they were like, you need to figure out like what you really need to create. And so I started to think about what are the problems. And when I was a sales leader at these big enterprise tech companies, and over the last 13 years, working with all these startups and growth phase companies, helping them innovate and digitally transform and modernize and learn how to sell and learn how to market better with all these automation tools. And I finally, started to think about what are the things that I've just never been able to solve very well. And there were three of them that kind of came to my mind. The first one is salespeople, and I can say this because I am one. Salespeople do a really poor job of getting ready for a meeting.
Yeah.
Right? You should spend 30 to 60 minutes like getting ready for the meeting, reading the 10K and the 10Q and understanding who this person is and thinking about, look at their about page, look at their LinkedIn page. Who has 30 to 60 minutes to do that? Nobody, which means it doesn't get done. So what do we do as sellers? We show up to the call and we wing it, which means we are going to fail to be maximally relevant to that decision maker, which means we're going to shortchange ourselves in getting that person moved to the next step of our sales process.
That's right.
So the first thing I wanted Revenue Growth Agent to do is, in less than 5 minutes, how do I get a seller ready for that meeting? And that meant that I had to teach this tool. I had to train it. It's like you create your own little LLM or your own little custom GPT, a knowledge base, so that every one of my clients, Revenue Growth Agent, understands what they do, their value proposition, their solutions, their case studies, their testimonials, et cetera, so that it could look at that prospect and understand how to be relevant to that prospect with the solutions and talk tracks and things. Right. So basically what you do is in 1 minute, you type in 7 pieces of information that you already have. And in 1 minute, it gives you a perfect 3-page, everything you need to know to be ready for that call. The second problem that was just previously unsolvable is we salespeople are a hammer and everything looks like a nail. And our idea of discovery is I'm going to probe to the point where I get the person to validate that this could be a potential problem I can solve. And then the hammer comes out and I start going into my pitch and the demo and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I never did the discovery. I never quantified the value of solving the problem, which means there is no inherent ROI, which means there is not going to be a sale. And so what happens at the end of that pitch is that you get ghosted and you spend the next 2 weeks or 2 months trying to get that prospect back on the phone. Too late, because sales is the transfer of enthusiasm, and enthusiasm has a half-life. And the second thing it does is it leads the seller through a much better discovery, a value-based conversation rather than a product price conversation. The third thing it does is the minute you hang up with a call, the enthusiasm wanes because that prospect goes to their regularly scheduled program and the pressures and all the stuff they're after. And you lose momentum, which means it's going to be hard for you to get that person committed to the next step of your sales process. So when you leave the call and you're like, I'm going to send you some information because they asked me for it. I'm going to send you a draft proposal. Good luck getting that person back on the phone. What I wanted was at the end of a 20-minute conversation for Revenue Growth Agent to, in 1 minute, put together a pretty awesome draft proposal full of like everything about that conversation that you just had. What's the current state? What's the financial risk associated with those pain points and pressures and things that are getting in the client's way? And if I can help you cross the chasm from your current state to your future state, what does that future state look like? Ideally, what outcomes are we trying to achieve? What are the financial implications of that? What will it feel like when we're done with that? And it spells all that out, and that puts a vision of what it'll be like to work together. And then it uses that knowledge base and it puts together a proposal with the solution and the timeline and the project flow and high-level pricing and an ROI analysis, and then 2 case studies from your company that are the most relevant ones to that person's issues or industry or whatever. And it's a really, really compelling piece so that before you hang up, you can say, you know what we're talking about here is maybe a $50,000 investment and a $2 million upside in terms of the additional revenue. Even if I'm only half right, this is the biggest no-brainer on the planet. Like we should absolutely want to take the next step. So I'm going to pull my calendar up, you pull your calendar up, and let's see if we can get to the next Tuesday with this other decision maker. And you stand a much better chance of getting them committed right on that call while their enthusiasm is still at its peak. So those are the things that RGA does so far. And so far, clients love it. It's been really a lot of fun. And I just, it's 70 or 80 hours a week with my normal TechCXO workload and nights and weekends. But it's probably the most fun I've had. I've always loved my work, but this is the most fun I've had and the fastest that I've learned in 30 years.
Yeah, I agree. I've gone down these rabbit holes too, and you blink and it's 2 a.m. and you're like, oh my goodness. Well, look at this though. It's coming to life pretty good. So that's awesome. So everybody, I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes for you to check that out and learn more about the revenue growth agent. I think that's just an awesome example of strategy to execution. But the last segment we have is really this leadership side where you and I are at the C-suite table. We are there trying to help steer and course correct the overall direction of a company towards helping them generate more revenue and get happier customers and stuff. How are you helping people lead with AI?
So what I get a lot of times is we're not where we need to be, and we know it. And we have a few people that are starting to play with ChatGPT, and we've gotten a little bit of things, but we're not where we need to be. And for all the reasons that we talked about earlier, they're a bit paralyzed. And so, you know, a lot of it is just trying to clarify what are some steps that you can take and how should you take those. And I kind of break them down into sort of, you know, kind of do's and don'ts. So one is like, understand that like you're making a bit of an investment and you will get some great returns, but don't look for like $10 million returns immediately. You might get them, but chances are you still have to build up some critical mass. And then, you know, if you remember the Jim Collins, Good to Great, you get the flywheel turning, and eventually the momentum of the weight of the flywheel itself starts to build on that momentum and allows you to go faster and faster and faster with less and less energy. And that's where you need to do this. So the first thing I would do is understand who are those team members that are curiosity, that are, you know, curious about this stuff and that are likely to lean in and just play. And then foster that culture of exploration. And then start to engage in problem solving, right? And you do that as a team in terms of what are the things that we could solve that would move the needle for us. But also every time you run into something, just start to have that conversation with your favorite, you know, generative solution, Grok or Perplexity or Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever. And over time, you'll start to play and you'll see the transformative opportunities. And then you're just going to get ideas. Ooh, we could do this with that, or we can do this with that. So you've got to start to do some internal show and tell. And it doesn't matter how basic it is, right? But you're going to use these little tiny wins in order to sort of get some brainstorming going. And what you're going to find is other people will be curious. Let me lean into this. Can I get a $20 subscription as well? You know what? I just heard about this and we've been playing with this, but this solution is, you know, $100 a month. Why don't we just try this and play with it and just test it out? Worst comes to worst, we don't like it in 2 months, we just stop the subscription, we're out $200. But who knows what we'll discover along the way, right? Then it's like encouraging those fast pivots, right? And it kind of gets to the fact that it's like, oh, I was so comfortable and now ChatGPT 5, you know, threw me for a loop.
That's right.
Be okay with the pivot. You know, I can't tell you how many times I had a favorite LLM for certain things, right? Claude was my go-to for writing. You know, anything technical was, you know, ChatGPT. My initial, you know, partner in writing code was Claude. Now it's this thing called Zencoder. Right. Okay. And so I've had to kind of bounce in between things, and I have to get comfortable not feeling like I'm losing something or I'm not getting a return on an investment if I make that pivot. So get comfortable with that. It's only going to help you move faster. Right. And now you're starting to figure out like, all right, how do I create an ongoing learning culture? How do I start to facilitate this? Because what we can't lose sight of is change management. Right. We can't lose sight of. And then the last thing I suggest to clients is, get experienced help, right? Find somebody who has, you know, even though we're new into this, there's plenty of people with the 10,000 hours. Like if
That's
you
right.
think about like I was thinking about this over the weekend. Imagine go to any great big consultancy, right? And the person that is selling a massive $1 million AI engagement to these big companies who barely can use ChatGPT. They haven't really built anything. Now, it's not to say that they don't have 2 data scientists someplace back in this thing, but do the people that are going to be working on your project outside of those 2 data scientists, do they really know? Have they done practical implementation of that? Do they have a track record of creating value, for clients with AI? So find some experienced help and make that small investment in order to help kickstart your journey so that you're not fumbling around with something that somebody has already solved. So those
Yeah.
are kind of the do's. I think on the don't side is don't wait. Don't ignore governance and security. Don't overcomplicate your tech stack. Don't ignore privacy and regulations and things like that. And don't expect immediate transformation. I think those are all common sense things, but I think just hearing those allows clients to say, okay, this is doable. Like this is actionable. Like I can take steps on this. And,
Yeah.
and that's really the secret to the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. I love it because I tell clients this all the time. There are smarter people outside your organization than within. Find some, leverage them where you can, and they'll help you. And then the other point is like, business is so cyclical in certain scenarios, right? There's like times to sprint hard and go after market share, and there's times to spend a little bit more on the R&D side of it. And I think that's wholeheartedly the era that we're in right now. Like beef up your R&D budget a little bit, make sure you've got a few buckets of money set aside to spend $200-$300 on this tool or that tool, and to learn, to fail forward and learn your way through these couple of hiccups that you can. To make sure you really unpack and unlock it. And that's what a good leader is going to realize in my mind, right? Is like, you need to do this. We need to dig in on that stuff. Yeah. So powerful.
Yeah. There's one more piece of that you just made me think of in the fact that you live in this world. There's so many people that are so excited about the fancy front end of this and the insights that it's going to get you. And this is kind of where it goes back to maybe finding some experience. Sometimes the data is the thing that's in the way the most. And they need somebody like you or some of our other CTOs or just, people with expertise, because if you're going to get something great from AI, right, you can't put garbage into it and suppose that it's just going to fix it. So if you have, a CRM that's full of 15 years of garbage data, right, and you think that you're going to get these great dashboards and stuff because AI will do it, you're going to be frustrated. Right. So it might be time to use AI in order to make that cleanup much, much more efficient. But know that there's steps to get your data in order. And now you've created this asset that AI can actually mow through and actually deliver more value than you ever imagined.
Yeah, very well said. I see a lot of people going through that data cleanup exercise. So that's where I do think potentially the Gartner's report might be true for the people that didn't clean up their data, went too fast, flared out because they didn't have a strong plan, and all the other people that did a little bit more legwork are going to be coming around the horn here shortly. So yeah, I don't know. This has been very, very powerful, Matt. We appreciate you taking some time out to speak with us.
It's been a lot of fun. I'm really delighted you had me on, and I'm looking forward to great things from AI with Brian. I'm a fan, and I'm going to tune in, and I'm going to tell my friends as well.
Cool. Well, we appreciate you helping get the word out. And that's a good reminder. If you're listening and enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor, follow the podcast, leave us a quick review, share it with somebody else who wants to grow with AI. I'll make sure I drop Matt's LinkedIn link and his link to his tools and stuff in the show notes. You can find out more about Matt and TechCXO at techcxo.com. And that's all we've got today. Any parting words for us, Matt?
No, I think, don't wait, jump in, start playing, be curious. And I think you'll be amazed at what you never thought you could do, but you can finally do.
That's awesome. Again, I'm Brian Denstead. We'll see everybody next week. And remember, the future isn't going to wait for you. Learn, leverage, and lead with AI.
This episode of AI with Bry was hosted and produced by me, Brian Denstedt. Produced with help from Nancy Velasquez and Kelly Lopez. Video by Leo Moralina. Sound AI generated. Find us on all platforms at AI with Bry and visit ai.bry.net for more. Learn, leverage, lead.